Welcome back to 101 East. This week, we're looking at the Uighur city of Kashgar and why its location is important to the Chinese government.
If Kashgar is surrounded on one side by the desert, it's protected on the other side by enormous mountain ranges. We drove along the Karakoram highway. Southwest of Kashgar is a special military zone. You need to get clearance from the authorities at a series of checkpoints just to enter here. The further you go, you see more military outposts set up to protect this huge border region. Across the mountains behind me is Pakistan. The army there is fighting a war with the Taliban. Across the mountains in that direction is Afghanistan. Same story. The Chinese government feels that if small separatist groups here could link up with insurgents across these borders, they could have a full-scale armed conflict in Western China. Came across the People's Liberation Army carrying out full-scale counterinsurgency training. Filming from a safe distance, we saw them preparing for bomb attacks and also chemical and biological warfare. These manoeuvres are part of training exercises which are being conducted throughout Xinjiang. There are many unguarded parts of this remote and wild border. Yet if trained-up jihadists try to infiltrate Uighur communities in China, the government has pledged to strike them severely.
If a handful of separatists or religious extremists or international terrorists appear, we will crack down on them immediately, based on international law.
High tensions in Xinjiang can already easily spill over into violent conflict. A mass Uighur protest in the regional capital Urumqi became a full-scale street battle. Nearly 200 people were killed and over 1,600 injured. We asked if the real reason for moving Kashgar's Uyghurs into flats was to make it easier to control them. The deputy mayor said this was totally groundless nonsense.
We only want people to live in anti-earthquake, safe, comfortable houses, to improve their living conditions and surroundings.
有没有好多那个分裂分子的统治者？
Stop. My duties do not involve public security. It's hard for me to comment on these issues. I'm only in charge of city renovations. Of ideology or crimes, I don't have any knowledge.
The practical impact of the demolition program is that 50,000 Uyghurs must now leave the old city. The government says that most people are happy to go.
We will never force anyone to leave. We don't have this type of plan.
But it doesn't take long to find people who say they're being forced out against their will.
We won't move. They'll only achieve their goal by burying us in the ground. We won't move from here. This is where we live for generations. These houses are ours.
A propaganda program runs every night on local television. It extols the virtues of moving out of the old city and into new apartment blocks. Smiling and waving Uyghurs are shown, celebrating this big change. Artists' impressions show the new buildings which will replace the old. On the outskirts of the city, identical blocks of flats are being built to receive the old town's population. Some here are finding it hard to adjust.
Our lives in Kashgar city were good. With our neighbors, we sent regards to each other. We cried the death of our relatives together. We blessed each other at weddings. But here, we don't know each other.
It's no use getting angry now. We'll just make ourselves sick if we worry too much. Of course, if we were allowed to move back to our old houses, it would be good. But this is not going to happen. We are living here now. Maybe it will get better.
With polystyrene and plaster already bursting through fresh coats of paint, you can see that these buildings are not what they're cracked up to be. This looks like normal concrete, but on closer inspection, you can hear how hollow it is. Goodness knows what this place is going to look like in a few years' time. But it's not so much the quality of the new, but the loss of the old which worries people.
I love my ancient house. This place is like a temple of heaven. We really don't want to move. Could a new place equal this? It's impossible.
The traditional courtyard house is also a refuge for Muslim women who can dress how they want without being seen in public.
We don't want to move, but if the government forces us, we don't have any option.
But most people are in the dark about what will become of the old city. In part, that's because local authorities are still deciding how to proceed. According to the government, the houses which can pass anti-earthquake tests will be left alone. Those which can be renovated to reach the anti-earthquake standards will be renovated. The rest will be demolished and, they say, rebuilt in a traditional style. The Deputy Mayor says in some areas, whole communities will then move back in together.
If you're asking me for a percentage or how many will be restored, our current plans are area by area and we haven't completed them. But if the local people are happy, we'll take it to the next step. We'll accomplish this task together.
The government has its work cut out for it, convincing the locals that their city will be rebuilt in a traditional style.
No, it's nonsense. It's garbage. It's stupid to listen to the government.
Amongst the travellers who come to Kashgar, most are Chinese tourists. By demolishing large parts of the old town, the government risks destroying one of the main reasons people visit here. The government says that preserving the tourist industry isn't a good enough reason to keep people living in rundown houses.
If you live in a so-called historical but dangerous house and you have a lack of decent living facilities, tourists couldn't even stay here for one night. Am I right? So why should our people live in houses like this just for the sake of tourists?
The ancient work practices in Kashgar may seem charming, but according to the authorities, the ventilation here is an occupational health hazard.
We really like the old place. But to tell the truth, it's also really dangerous here. The government needs to rebuild it.
By the time we put these pictures to air, the historic blacksmith shops will have been levelled. But the government has promised to rebuild the entire blacksmith quarter on the same location and in a traditional style. Parts of Kashgar are already like any other provincial Chinese city. The main square is full of Han Chinese motifs. The locals joke that the statue of former leader Mao Zedong turns its back on the old town and points towards a different future. But the current leaders say all will be well here.
If you come back in 5 years to the core area of the old town of Kashgar, its special features will be preserved. Every family will have a job, everyone will live in an anti-earthquake house. The basic infrastructure will be completed and people's lives will have greatly improved.
Ordinary people here have no idea what's about to become of their ancient city. They don't trust the government at the best of times, and now they're feeling the pain of massive changes, even if these changes are being implemented with the best of intentions. All the Uighurs of Kashgar can do is pray that the result here is somehow a relatively good one. The authorities will be sharing this hope. If they get it right, it could inject some goodwill into a sour relationship. If they get it wrong, they risk giving the Uighurs a new reason to want to throw off Chinese occupation of their homeland.
That's all the time we have for this edition of 101 East. From all the team, thanks for watching.